Listen to me right now. You were not born to be average. You were born to dominate, to create, to build, to move through this life with strategy and power. But let me tell you something critical that most people will never teach you. If you want to move like a king, you can't walk around like a court jester. Most people move through life as if it's a popularity contest. They want to be seen, noticed, acknowledged. For every little thing they do, they crave validation, applause, and attention like it's oxygen. But here's the truth that separates the powerful from the average. True power doesn't need an audience. Real players make moves behind closed doors. They don't post every win, share every plan, or broadcast their intentions. They understand that the more people know about your next move, the easier it is for someone to block it. Power doesn't speak, it shows up and shifts the room without needing an introduction. There's a discipline that comes with silence. It requires confidence. When you're quiet about your goals, it doesn't mean you're uncertain, it means you're secure. You don't need to hype up your future because you're too busy building it. There's a quiet fire in people who are working for something bigger than themselves. They don't waste time convincing others they're going somewhere. They just go. They don't need to talk about how hard they're grinding because their life will become the evidence. Silence is not a weakness. It's a weapon when wielded with wisdom. You have to understand, not everybody is rooting for your success. Some people only smile at you so they can study you. They collect details not because they care, but because they want to weigh in. Maybe they're jealous. Maybe they're competitive, maybe they're small-minded and threatened by your potential. But if you never hand them the blueprint, they'll never figure out how to dismantle the house. That's why silence is essential. It protects the parts of your dream that are still under construction. No one can sabotage what they don't know exists. When you move in silence, you move without pressure. You free yourself from the weight of expectations. You're not worried about proving anything to anyone. You're not influenced by applause or criticism because no one knows what to cheer or what to attack. You're just focused, head down, tunnel vision. That kind of mindset is rare. It's dangerous. Because while everyone else is showing off, you're sharpening your sword in the dark. And when you finally show up, you're not just prepared, you're unstoppable. Powerful people play chess, not checkers. Every move is calculated. Every step has a purpose. They don't reveal their strategy to people who can't comprehend it. They don't explain themselves to those who are too caught up in small thinking to see the big picture. They stay low until the time is right. Silence is not about being hidden forever. It's about positioning yourself so that when you do emerge, the results speak louder than words ever could. The silence gives you space to grow without being judged. It gives you room to fail without public humiliation. It gives you the gift of trial and error, of learning and adjusting without the noise of opinions. There's something sacred about having a goal that lives only between you and God. Something sacred about holding a vision in your heart that no one else can see, yet you believe in it enough to keep building every single day. That kind of silent belief builds strength, it builds resilience. People love to predict your future based on your present, and that's exactly why you keep quiet. They'll see your circumstances and try to limit your potential. They'll look at where you are and assume that's all you'll ever be. But they don't know what you know. They don't see what's happening behind the scenes. They don't understand the battles you're fighting, the skills you're developing, the wisdom you're gaining. That's why silence is so powerful. It hides your transformation until it's too late for them to stop it. Working in silence creates momentum. Every step you take, every habit you form, every sacrifice you make, it all builds up quietly, consistently. And then one day, people wake up to the version of you they never saw coming. They call it overnight success, but what they didn't see were the months or years of grinding, bleeding, sweating, praying, and pushing in silence. That silence was the soil, and now the harvest is undeniable. Even in relationships, in business, in leadership, those who talk too much often lose influence. People start to doubt you when you always have something to say but rarely have results to show. The quiet leader, the disciplined entrepreneur, the focused visionary, they carry a different energy. Their words have weight because they only speak when necessary, and when they do speak, people listen. because they've built a reputation not on noise, but on evidence. When you move in silence, you take back control. You stop reacting to what people think, say, or expect. You stop living in a performance loop, constantly needing to explain, impress, or justify. You start moving from your core, from purpose. Silence centers you. It grounds you. It gives you the strength to ignore distractions and keep building what matters. Power doesn't need a spotlight. It just needs a mission and the discipline to see it through, even when no one's watching. You have a vision, a dream, a plan. It's been planted in your heart for a reason. It came to you in quiet moments, through experience, revelation, maybe even pain. It's yours. It's sacred. And yet the moment you start giving it away to people who haven't earned your trust, you start handing over control of what's meant to be protected. See, not everybody needs to know what you're building. Not everybody deserves to hear your strategy. And when you start talking too much, you unknowingly invite opinions, resistance, and energy that can distort the very thing you're trying to create. Some people don't want you to win. That's a hard truth, but a necessary one. They may smile at you, nod at your ideas, but inside they're taking notes because they're not inspired, they're intimidated. And when you open up your blueprint to the wrong eyes, you give them the opportunity to plant seeds of doubt, to copy your plan, or worse, to move ahead of you using pieces of what you revealed. It doesn't always come with hate. It can come dressed as curiosity, support, or advice, but underneath, it's a silent attempt to infiltrate your process. There is value in being misunderstood early. There is power in not being seen until you're ready. When you talk too much about what you're building, you're trying to convince people of something you haven't even proven to yourself yet. And that's dangerous. You allow other people's fears, limits, and experiences to shape how you see your own potential. They'll say, that's too hard, or no one's done that before, or why not just do this instead? And suddenly, your blueprint starts shifting, not because it was wrong, but because you let too many hands touch it. The people who move with real purpose don't ask for constant approval. They don't throw their ideas out to every crowd just to see who claps. They know what they're building and why. They stay close to it, protect it, refine it, and work it every single day. And while everyone else is busy talking, posting, and promoting dreams they haven't even started, the ones who guard their blueprint are the ones laying bricks in silence. They know the cost of progress, and they won't risk it for premature praise. When you expose your blueprint too early, you don't just risk competition, you risk confusion. What starts as a clear, focused plan can quickly become a tangled mess of feedback, doubt, and overthinking. People will start suggesting shortcuts, detours, or their own versions of your vision. Before you know it, you're not even building what you set out to build, you're building what people think you should. That's how legacies get lost. That's how originality gets diluted. You trade in authenticity for approval and don't even realize it until it's too late. Everyone's got opinions, but not everyone has insight. And just because someone loves you doesn't mean they understand your path. Some people simply can't grasp what you're doing because it's not meant for them. It wasn't given to them. That blueprint was downloaded into you. It fits your spirit, your hands, your mind. You can't expect others to comprehend something they were never called to carry. That's why you've got to be selective. Share only with those who have earned access, not those who just happen to be near you. There's a difference between accountability and exposure. Being accountable means you have someone who can challenge you, push you, help you grow privately. Exposure, on the other hand, is when you recklessly reveal your plans to people who have no investment in your success. And when you do that, you create unnecessary pressure to perform or prove. You lock yourself into a narrative that's still unfolding, and now you're editing your path just to meet the expectations of people who were never supposed to have a say. You owe your vision your silence. You owe it the time to mature. Greatness needs space to evolve before it's shared. A seed doesn't show its fruit on day one. It needs to go deep in the soil. It needs to be watered. It needs darkness. The same is true for your ideas. Not every phase needs to be public. Not every thought needs to be posted. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is just keep building with your head down and your spirit up. People confuse visibility with validation. They think the more people know, the more real their goals become. But it's the opposite. The more people know, the more vulnerable your plan becomes to distortion, doubt, and delay. Silence keeps the power where it belongs, with you. You don't owe the world an explanation for your process. You don't need to advertise every step. You just need to show up prepared when it's time. And that only happens when the blueprint stays in the right hands. The people who make the most noise often have the least foundation. They broadcast every idea, every move, every ambition, and while the world watches, waiting for them to deliver, they burn out trying to meet the hype. But the ones who protect their blueprint, they rise differently. They rise with substance, with integrity, with structure. And when the world finally sees what they've built, it's undeniable because it wasn't rushed, it wasn't borrowed, and it was developed in silence, by design, and with a blueprint only they could carry. The powerful shift that happens when you finally understand that access is a privilege, not a right. Too many people live their lives wide open, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually exposed to whoever shows up. But life will teach you that not everyone deserves to know the real you. Not everyone should be invited into your sacred space. You don't owe people access just because they're curious, just because they're related to you, or just because they were once part of your past. Maturity is learning to guard what's valuable, especially when that valuable thing is you. People often confuse availability with kindness. They'll guilt you into overextending yourself, into explaining your boundaries, into softening your convictions. But you are not unkind for protecting your peace. You are not selfish for saying no. You are not wrong for choosing yourself. Some people are so used to taking advantage of your openness that when you start closing doors, they call it attitude, but they were never grateful for the access. They were entitled to it, and that entitlement has to go. You are not a community project. You are not a walking therapy session, a permanent support line, or a dumping ground for other people's drama. Just because someone is going through something doesn't mean you are assigned to fix it. Just because someone wants your time doesn't mean you're obligated to give it. Emotional availability is a limited resource, and when you give it out freely to everyone, you end up drained, bitter, and empty. You have to preserve energy for your purpose. You have to protect your space from the wrong energy. Sometimes the people you're protecting yourself from are the same ones you once gave everything to. That's where the real growth happens, when you can walk away from the familiar because you've realized it's also toxic. It might be friends, family, or old partners. They may not be bad people, but they may no longer belong in the chapter you're stepping into. And that's okay. Growth will always require separation. Your elevation may offend those who are only comfortable with your limitation. People will test your boundaries just to see if you'll hold the line. They'll push, manipulate, flatter, guilt, anything to regain access. But once you've drawn that line, you must protect it like a fortress. The moment you fold, they'll learn that your no just means try harder. And now you've taught them that access to you doesn't require respect. It only requires persistence. That's not empowerment. That's enslavement to other people's approval. You cannot heal, grow, or rise if your time and energy are constantly being hijacked by those who don't value you. Being selective with your access doesn't make you arrogant. It makes you wise. You're not meant to be everything to everyone. You're not required to be endlessly available. You're allowed to disconnect, to unplug, to retreat, and recharge. There's a deep power in knowing when to speak and when to stay silent, when to be present and when to walk away. And that power grows the moment you realize your worth is not measured by how much of yourself you give away. There will be people who misunderstand your boundaries. They'll call you distant, cold, or even fake. But those labels come from a place of disappointment, not truth. What they're really saying is, I missed the version of you that didn't know how to protect yourself, but that version of you no longer exists. And it shouldn't, because the you who knows your value, who knows your mission, who is rooted in purpose, that version can't afford to be easily accessible. The more valuable you become, the more you have to guard yourself. Think about the most precious things in the world: gold, diamonds, even classified information. None of it is kept out in the open. It's stored in vaults, protected, shielded. Why? Because rarity demands security. If you treat yourself like a clearance item, don't be surprised when people treat you like you're replaceable. You teach people how to handle you by how you handle yourself. When you start requiring more, the ones who never intended to respect you will start to disappear. It's not about being closed off. It's about being intentional. You can still be kind without being accessible. You can still love people without letting them too close. You can still care without sacrificing yourself in the process. Discernment is knowing the difference between someone who's coming to support you and someone who's coming to siphon from you. Not everyone deserves your energy, your attention, or your vulnerability. That's not bitterness, that's wisdom. People often chase after validation, connection, and acceptance, thinking that if they just open up a little more, they'll finally be loved the right way. But the truth is, real love, healthy love, will never require you to deplete yourself. It will honor your boundaries. It will respect your process. It will see your value without needing constant access to prove it. And the more you understand that, the more you'll realize how much of your life you've been giving away to people who were never meant to have that kind of power over you. There's a time when words carry weight, but eventually even the most eloquent explanations fade if they're not backed by results. You can talk all day about what you're going to do, how hard you're working, and what you're capable of, but if there's nothing tangible to show for it, people stop listening. Explanations are a currency that lose value without execution. In a world flooded with opinions and intentions, the only thing that still speaks truth without shouting is result. Results are irrefutable. They shut down doubt, end debates, and make explanations unnecessary. We live in a society where everyone is branding themselves, promoting their potential, and marketing their ambition, but very few are actually delivering. You don't have to explain your vision to anyone when you've got evidence. Results are the receipts of discipline. They're the proof that you followed through when it was easier to quit. They show that you sacrificed for your goals long after the motivation faded. People can challenge your ideas. They can question your path, but they can't argue with fruit that's already been harvested. Talking is easy. Talking makes you feel like you're doing something. You get the dopamine hit without the grind. You get the applause without the effort. But there's no sustainability in that. You'll find yourself constantly trying to convince people that you're serious while your life shows no progress. At some point, you have to stop narrating the journey and start walking it. Stop trying to prove you're becoming something and just be, because once your actions line up with your words, your reputation changes. People start believing not because you said it, but because they see it. Every minute you spend explaining yourself to someone who doesn't understand your grind is a minute taken away from actually getting closer to your goal. You owe no one a justification for why you're quiet, distant, unavailable, or focused. Let your future speak for you. Let your work introduce you. When you produce results, you don't have to tell people to respect you. They just do. Not because you asked, but because they're witnessing transformation. The most powerful comeback isn't a speech. It's success that can't be denied. You see, explanations come from a need to be understood. And while it's natural to want that, it can become a trap. You end up trying to get people to see what only you are called to carry. You try to verbalize what's still in progress, still unfolding, but not everything needs to be said. Some things just need to be done. Some things are better shown than told. Because when it's finished, when the business is built, the body is transformed, the dream is alive, there won't be a need to explain. The results will say everything you couldn't. People don't remember what you said about your goals. They remember what you did about them. You can tell the world you're grinding, but if your habits don't reflect discipline, your words mean nothing. You can say you want greatness, but if your calendar is filled with distractions and excuses, you're not fooling anyone. Results require consistency, not just motivation. They require silence, sacrifice, and a level of commitment most people aren't willing to maintain. And that's why results are so rare. They cost more than talk ever will. There's a peace that comes with knowing you don't have to argue about who you are anymore. You don't have to defend your decisions or debate your path. You just live it. You keep showing up. You keep getting better. And as time passes, the same people who once doubted, dismissed, or disrespected you are forced to acknowledge the truth. Not because you convinced them, but because your results made it impossible not to. The respect that's earned through action is stronger than the respect that's demanded with words. Even in failure, results speak. They show you tried. They show you took risks. They show you're in the arena, not sitting on the sidelines criticizing others. You learn from results. Even when they're not what you hope for, you grow through them. But explanations, they don't grow you. They pacify your ego. They keep you in a loop of justification instead of momentum. That's why successful people speak less and do more. They don't chase validation. They chase mastery. And mastery doesn't explain itself. It shows up prepared. When people start to notice what you're doing, they'll ask questions. They'll want to know how, when, and why. But until then, there's no need to make noise. Let your performance speak. Let your impact be the loudest thing about you. Explanations can be ignored, misinterpreted, or forgotten. But results, they stick. They echo. They open doors that your words couldn't. They attract opportunities your explanations never reached. They change the way people see you, whether you speak or stay silent. Ultimately, results earn you something far more valuable than validation. They earn you credibility. And credibility is currency, it's influence, it's power. You don't have to force your way into rooms when your results walk in before you. You don't have to prove your worth when your work already made the statement. It's not about arrogance, it's about alignment. When your results reflect your vision, your purpose becomes undeniable. And there's no louder voice in the world than a life that proves itself. There's a certain advantage in being underestimated, in moving under the radar, in not being the loudest one in the room. When people don't see you coming, they can't prepare for you. They can't develop strategies to distract you, derail you, or duplicate you. When your moves are private, your momentum is protected. We're conditioned to believe that we have to announce every goal, post every plan, and gather validation before we take the first step. But the truth is, the more silent your strategy, the stronger your strike. When you operate in silence, you don't give people time to construct roadblocks. You don't invite unnecessary opinions, doubts, or discouragement. The problem with sharing too early is that you give people the chance to project their fears and limitations onto something you haven't even finished forming. People don't always want you to lose, but many don't want you to win before them. It's not always hate, it's their own insecurity showing. And when you move quietly, you sidestep the weight of their projection. The enemy can't fight what they can't find. And sometimes the enemy's not a person, it's a mindset and environment or a system that thrives on predictability. When you keep showing your hand, you give the opposition a pattern to follow. They start anticipating your next move, setting traps, planting distractions. But when you break that pattern, when you shift in silence, they lose the ability to influence your outcome. You control the narrative. You become the plot twist no one saw coming. It's not about hiding, it's about building without interruption. It's about honoring the process without rushing the exposure. There's power in privacy. In that hidden space, you get clarity, you get vision, you get direction without the noise of 1,000 voices chiming in with half-baked advice. You get to hear your own intuition again. You get to make decisions not based on pressure or performance, but on purpose. And that kind of alignment only happens in the quiet. People love to analyze. They love to study your next step and try to copy or compete. But when they can't figure out what you're doing, they can't replicate it. Originality thrives in secrecy. That's where innovation is born. You're not supposed to build your blueprint in the middle of a crowd. You're supposed to protect it, test it, refine it until it's ready to be revealed, and not a moment sooner, because once it's out there, you invite exposure. And with exposure comes interference. You don't have to broadcast your grind for it to be real. You don't have to prove your hustle to make it effective. There's a sacredness in being the underdog and being overlooked and letting your work speak long before your name does. You don't lose power by being unknown. You gain the freedom to build without the weight of expectations. Nobody's watching, so you get to take risks. You get to fail privately. You get to grow without judgment. And that freedom, it becomes your advantage. When people can't predict your next move, they waste their energy trying to figure you out instead of getting ahead of you. And by the time they realize what you're up to, you're already gone. You're ahead. You've executed. You've leveled up. And they're still caught in confusion. That's what happens when you move with intention, not attention. You don't let your ego drive the car. You let strategy take the wheel. You delay the applause so you can secure the win. And when the win comes, it speaks so loud, you never have to explain the journey. Even those with the best intentions can unintentionally block your blessings when they see too much too soon. Their advice can shift your timing. Their doubts can trigger your own. That's why there's wisdom in withholding. Let them see results, not rehearsal. Let them witness the finished product, not the messy middle. The fewer people who have access to your process, the fewer opinions you have to navigate. That's not secrecy, it's stewardship. You're protecting what you're building. In the silence, you sharpen your weapons. You train, study, practice, you fail forward and grow through it all. The public sees the performance, but the private space is where mastery is developed. People think the victory happened overnight, but they miss the hundreds of nights you spent grinding when no one was watching. That's why it's dangerous to judge someone's current chapter. You don't know how many pages they turned in private to get there. You don't know the cost of their breakthrough. Moving in silence is not about being sneaky. It's about being strategic. When people don't know your next move, they can't prepare resistance. When they don't see you as a threat, they don't try to slow you down. And when your plan is protected from the spotlight, it's allowed to grow without interference. You become unstoppable, not because you're the loudest, but because you're the most focused. And in that focus, you become the force they never saw coming. There's a deception in noise. In a culture that celebrates loudness, loud opinions, loud lifestyles, loud personalities, it's easy to believe that volume equals strength. But often, the loudest one in the room is masking the deepest insecurity. Loudness seeks validation. It needs applause. It thrives on attention because it's fueled by emptiness. On the other hand, quietness doesn't require permission. It doesn't chase approval. It's steady, self-assured, and anchored in inner certainty. That kind of quiet, it's not timidity, it's discipline under control. Loud people often talk about what they're going to do, how powerful they are, what they're capable of. They make grand statements, exaggerated claims, and dramatic gestures. But underneath it all, you'll often find fear. Fear that they won't be taken seriously, fear that they'll be overlooked, fear that silence might make them invisible. But true power doesn't need a stage. It only needs a strategy. The strongest minds don't compete for the spotlight. They design the systems that control it. Quiet is not weakness, it's preparation. It's the calm before the storm, the stillness before the leap. A quiet person is often a dangerous one because their energy is not scattered, it's concentrated. They're not wasting time trying to impress. They're working, studying, building. While others are talking, they're evolving. They don't need to convince you of who they are because they already know. And when they move with purpose. There's no hesitation, no theatrics, just precise execution. A loud presence is like thunder, impressive for a moment, but empty if not followed by rain. Quiet people are the rain. They bring substance. They bring impact. They don't announce their every move, but their moves are undeniable. You feel their presence not because they demand attention, but because the results change the temperature of the room. People respect them not for what they say, but for what they've mastered in silence. Loudness tries to dominate space. It wants to be seen, heard, and acknowledged. But power doesn't always need recognition. It seeks results. A truly powerful person can walk into a room and shift the entire atmosphere without saying a word. They don't compete, they command. They don't posture, they produce. Their confidence is not dependent on external feedback. It's rooted in experience, consistency, and clarity of purpose. That kind of power is rare, and it's never loud. Loud people need witnesses to feel successful. Quiet people know they're successful even when no one's watching. That's why they can endure solitude. That's why they don't mind going unnoticed for a season. They understand that real growth happens in the shadows, not under the spotlight. They embrace the hidden grind, the long nights, the uncelebrated wins, because they're not after attention, they're after elevation. And elevation doesn't require an audience. It requires focus. There's something unshakable about a person who doesn't flinch when they're overlooked, who doesn't feel the need to prove themselves constantly. That kind of quiet confidence unnerves the loud. It frustrates them because they don't understand how someone can be so calm, so composed, so committed without needing applause. But that's what separates power from performance. One is for show, the other is for impact. One fades when the crowd disappears. The other lasts even in silence. Loud energy often burns fast. It's driven by hype and impulsiveness. But quiet energy builds momentum. It's sustained by vision, discipline, and long-term thinking. Quiet people don't rush because they know where they're going. They don't panic when things slow down because they've already prepared. They've already calculated the cost. They're not chasing trends. They're building legacy. And legacy is never loud. It's felt in the echoes long after the noise dies down. A loud person needs to be right in every conversation. A quiet person doesn't mind being misunderstood. They know that truth reveals itself over time. They don't argue with small minds or try to convince shallow hearts. They let their results speak, their presence teach, and their character lead. The quiet ones listen more than they speak, not because they lack ideas, but because they understand timing. They know when to speak and when to let silence make the loudest statement. Quiet is powerful because it's rooted in control. Control over the tongue, the ego, the emotions. Loudness often reveals a lack of self-regulation. But when you can move with calm certainty, when you don't react to every provocation, when you can maintain peace in the face of pressure, that's true strength. That's influence. And that's why the ones who speak the least are often the ones you should watch the most. People spend a lot of time trying to prove who they are. They drop credentials, quote achievements, list connections, and name drop success like it's a resume. But none of that really tells the truth about someone. What tells the truth is fruit. You can claim to be disciplined, committed, and wise, but if your life isn't producing evidence of that, the claim falls flat. The fruit of your life, your results, your consistency, your impact, that's the only thing that verifies the root of your character. A tree doesn't argue that it's healthy. It simply bears fruit that makes it undeniable. There's something powerful about living in a way that requires no explanations. When your fruit is evident, you don't have to beg people to believe in you. You don't have to explain your intentions or fight for validation. People will recognize the integrity of your root by what your life produces. If your life is bearing wisdom, peace, growth, and discipline, then your foundation is strong. If it's producing chaos, inconsistency, or dysfunction, then it's time to inspect what you're rooted in. The truth always shows up. Eventually, it ripens, just like fruit. The problem with most people is they want to showcase fruit without tending to the root. They want success without process, reputation without character, applause without discipline. But fruit doesn't grow because of public appearance. It grows because of private maintenance. What you water in the dark eventually shows up in the light. You don't get to cheat that process. And if you do, it's artificial fruit, shiny on the outside, but hollow on the inside. It might fool a few people for a little while, but time always reveals the truth. What you're rooted in determines how you respond to storms. If you're rooted in purpose, then pressure makes you sharper. If you're rooted in validation, then pressure makes you anxious and unstable. Real roots keep you grounded when everything else is shifting. They keep you from chasing quick wins or public approval. They make you slow down and grow right. Because when you're rooted in the right things, discipline, faith, clarity, humility, then your life starts to reflect that in every area. You don't have to broadcast it. You don't have to convince anyone. The fruit will speak for itself. Fruit is not just about material success. It's about alignment. It's about peace. It's about relationships that thrive, choices that multiply, and habits that elevate. It's about being consistent when nobody's clapping. It's about getting better over time, not just bigger. Fruit is found in your attitude, your language, your patience, your ability to stay planted when others quit. Fruit is in your follow-through, not just your ambition. People can talk big, but the ones who walk steady always bear more weight. One of the biggest traps is trying to prove your root to people who don't have the capacity to recognize real fruit. You'll waste energy trying to get approval from people who are only familiar with artificial success. They're impressed by flash, not substance. But people with discernment, people who are rooted themselves, will see you. They'll recognize the difference. You don't need to compete. You just need to keep growing. Eventually, your consistency will expose their performance. Growth is quiet before it's obvious. Roots grow down before anything grows up. So just because it looks like nothing is happening doesn't mean you're stuck. It means you're developing. The deeper the root, the stronger the tree. That's why some people rise fast and fall faster. They never took time to root. They got caught up in looking successful instead of becoming sustainable. But when your root is deep, you can weather storms that would have uprooted others. You stand not because you're lucky, but because you're anchored. Fruit has seasons. You won't always be in harvest. There are times when you're pruning, cutting back, shedding leaves. That doesn't mean you're failing. It means you're maturing. The root is still doing its work. Don't be fooled by people who look fruitful for a moment but burn out the next. Look for people who are still producing 10 years from now. That's the kind of fruit that proves the root was strong. It takes time to build something that lasts, and only the rooted are willing to wait. When you're focused on your root, you stop being distracted by comparison. You stop looking at what others are producing and start nurturing what's yours. You become more protective of your environment, more selective about your relationships, more intentional with your energy, because you realize that the root determines everything. If it's neglected, everything else suffers. But if it's strong, everything else follows. The fruit may take time, but when it comes, it won't need marketing. It will be undeniable. People can fake a lot of things: followers, style, charisma, and charm. But you can't fake fruit. Eventually, life will test your foundation. Storms will hit, challenges will press you. Time will expose what you've been rooted in, and when it does, the only thing that will matter is whether your life can produce something real, something that multiplies, something that lasts. Because at the end of the day, the root is private, but the fruit is public. And if you've been faithful to the root, the fruit will always show up. Your purpose is not a casual idea. It's your calling, your mission, your assignment on this earth. It's not something you stumbled into. It was placed in you for a reason. That kind of treasure deserves protection. Not everyone should have access to your vision. Not everyone deserves a seat at the table where your dreams are being served. Just like a fortune, your purpose is valuable, vulnerable, and highly sought after by distractions, by doubt, by people who wouldn't know what to do with it if they held it. That's why you have to treat it like it's priceless, because it is. A fortune attracts attention. It draws eyes, motives, and opportunists. In the same way, when you begin walking in purpose, people start noticing you, not always to support, but sometimes to steal. Some people don't want to build, they want to attach. They're not interested in your vision, they're interested in the access your vision provides. That's why boundaries are not just optional, they're essential. You don't leave a vault open for anyone to walk in. You secure it, you guard it. And that same energy is required when you're building something purposeful. Purpose doesn't flourish in chaos. It needs clarity, space, and protection from confusion. If you're constantly explaining yourself, defending your choices, or negotiating your standards, you're wasting energy that could be used for building. Protecting your purpose means refusing to let people talk you out of what you know you're called to do. It means choosing silence over explaining, distance over drama, and discipline over distraction. It means not everyone gets to know what's next, not because you're secretive, but because you're strategic. There are people who will try to minimize your purpose because it intimidates them. They'll plant seeds of doubt, suggest smaller paths, and encourage you to stay where it's safe. But their fear is not your responsibility. You weren't called to stay comfortable. You were called to be impactful. And that means your purpose will stretch you beyond what others think is reasonable. Protecting it means refusing to shrink just to make others feel secure. It means choosing alignment over approval. Not everything needs to be shared. Just like a financial investor doesn't announce every move they make, you don't need to publicize every decision tied to your calling. Let your purpose be protected in silence until it's time for action. Because once it's exposed to critique, to sabotage, to misunderstanding. And the earlier you reveal it, the more vulnerable it becomes. Don't be so eager to show progress that you forfeit protection. Some things grow better in the dark. When you protect your purpose, you also protect your peace. Peace is the environment where purpose breathes. If you're constantly surrounded by chaos, noise, and negativity, your vision becomes cloudy. But when you guard your mind, your time, and your relationships, you create space for clarity. Purpose doesn't compete for your attention. It waits for your focus. And when it gets your full attention, it will guide you to places you never imagined. But you can't hear it clearly if you're always listening to the crowd. People often treat purpose like it's flexible, like it can be molded into whatever is trending or popular, but purpose doesn't bend for convenience. It demands commitment. And the moment you start compromising it for approval or fast rewards, you devalue it. You wouldn't trade a diamond for a dollar, so don't trade your calling for clout. Protecting it means staying rooted when it would be easier to pivot. It means trusting the process even when it feels slow, because real purpose is long-term. It's legacy, not hype. Every purposeful person must master discernment, knowing who to trust, where to pour, and when to move. Just because someone is close doesn't mean they should be connected to your calling. Not every friendship is meant to be part of your future, and not every opportunity is aligned with your assignment. Protecting your purpose requires you to be selective, intentional, and unapologetic. You don't owe access to everyone. You owe accountability to what you've been called to do. There will be seasons where protecting your purpose feels lonely, where people don't understand why you're pulling back, why you're less available, why you're saying no more often. But those seasons are necessary. They're the seasons where foundations are strengthened, character is developed, and vision is sharpened. You weren't meant to be constantly available. You were meant to be deeply aligned. Purpose demands solitude sometimes because transformation happens in private before elevation happens in public. Treat your purpose like wealth. Invest in it, guard it, build it carefully. Don't flaunt it before it's time. Don't let just anyone near it. And don't ever apologize for prioritizing it. Because when you treat it like treasure, you'll move differently, you'll think long-term, you'll make moves that outlast trends, and eventually your fruit will show the value of what you've been protecting all along. Building in private is the ultimate form of focus. It's about carving out time, space, and energy where your vision can evolve without distraction. The world doesn't need to know what you're working on until it's ready to shine. Too often people share their dreams too early, seeking validation, approval, or attention. But validation is fleeting. What's lasting is the substance of what you build. When you keep your projects private, you allow them to grow at their own pace, free from outside influences and expectations. You give yourself the luxury of experimenting, failing, and refining without the pressure of an audience. The temptation to announce what you're doing to the world is strong, but it's often counterproductive. When you tell everyone your plans too early, you invite unnecessary opinions, doubts, and second guessing. Everyone will have something to say about what you're creating, and not all of it will be helpful. Some will project their own fears onto your work. Others may even try to sabotage your progress, knowingly or unknowingly. When you're building in private, you avoid the noise. You protect your vision from being diluted by the distractions of others' expectations. You give yourself permission to take risks and make mistakes without feeling like you need to explain yourself. The key to building privately is patience. It takes time to perfect something that's meaningful, something that can stand the test of time. Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither is any meaningful work. Whether you're creating a business, a product, or a body of art, the process of crafting something valuable is slow, meticulous, and full of learning. You have to be comfortable with the process of becoming. It's easy to get caught up in the rush to show results. But true power is found in the quiet moments when you're working, learning, and growing without needing the world's applause. Building in private allows you to grow in peace and confidence without the pressure of proving yourself too soon. Launching in power comes from knowing that the time you've spent in private has prepared you for the spotlight. When you're building in private, you're not just putting things together, you're perfecting them. You're testing your ideas, refining your skills, and building something that's not just a flash in the pan, but something that can endure. When you eventually launch, it's with the knowledge that everything is in place, that you've done the work, and that what you're offering is solid and ready to stand on its own. That level of preparation is what fuels the power of your launch. It's not about how loud you announce it, but the quiet confidence you exude because you know the depth of your work. Building in private also allows you to innovate without limits. When you're not bound by the expectations of others, you have the freedom to experiment. You can take your time to test, tweak, and revise your ideas until they are truly unique. When the world isn't watching, you have the space to push boundaries, to try things that might not work, and to learn from those failures. This is where true innovation happens. When you build in private, you're giving yourself the freedom to be fully creative, fully experimental, and fully authentic. And when it's time to launch, you do so with something that is truly your own. The launch itself becomes a moment of power because it's not just about unveiling something new, it's about showing the world the results of your consistent private work. When you've spent time building in the shadows, your launch is no longer about proving your worth or getting validation. It's about delivering something of value to the world. People feel the difference. They know that what you're offering isn't rushed, isn't half-baked, and isn't a marketing gimmick. It's the result of deep, thoughtful work. And when people see that level of dedication and authenticity, they're more likely to respond with respect and enthusiasm. Keeping your work private before the launch also gives you the opportunity to refine your messaging. You don't have to try to sell people on something you haven't fully fleshed out. Instead, you can focus on the essence of what you're offering and how it serves your audience. By the time you launch, your message is clear and your purpose is aligned. You're not scrambling for words or struggling to explain why what you're offering matters. You've had time to refine the narrative, to shape the story, and to ensure that everything you say is intentional and precise. The power of the launch comes from this clarity and confidence. The difference between a loud, unprepared launch and a quiet, powerful one is depth. When you've taken the time to build in private, you don't have to sell your idea with noise and hype. Your idea sells itself through its quality, its value, and the time you've spent perfecting it. A well-prepared launch doesn't need to be flashy. It doesn't need a parade or a lot of attention. What it needs is substance. What it needs is a product, service, or creation that speaks for itself, backed by hard work and careful planning. The power comes from the quiet confidence that comes with knowing you've done the work. When you build in private, you also shield yourself from the pressure of competition. In a world that's obsessed with comparison, it's easy to get distracted by what others are doing. But when you're building quietly, you're not concerned with what everyone else is launching or how fast they're doing it. You're focused on your own journey, on your own timeline. Your purpose isn't dictated by external pressures, but by your internal vision. And when it's time to launch, you do so on your own terms, unbothered by who's ahead or behind you. Your work is what matters, and that's where your power lies. Building in private cultivates resilience. The road to creating something of value is often bumpy. You'll face challenges, setbacks, and moments of doubt. But when you're building in private, you have the space to fail without anyone watching. You can pick yourself back up, learn from your mistakes, and keep going without the fear of public judgment. This resilience becomes a key part of your strength when you finally do launch. You launch not from a place of desperation or needing approval, but from a place of solid confidence in your journey and your abilities. There's power in being untraceable. In a world that constantly demands visibility, there's something magnetic about those who remain just out of reach, operating in the shadows until their moment arrives. People are drawn to mystery because mystery implies mastery. It signals that there's more beneath the surface, and it keeps others curious, waiting and watching. The secret to building real influence isn't in overexposing yourself, but in quietly mastering your craft, your strategy, and your purpose until you're undeniable. This level of presence isn't about proving anything. It's about letting your work and your results speak louder than any words or appearances. Being untraceable allows you to control your narrative. You get to choose what people see and what they don't. You don't have to follow the trends of oversharing, of letting everyone know every step you take. Instead, you work in silence, perfecting your skills and your plans without the constant need for validation. This quiet preparation is what strengthens your foundation and sets you up for greatness. People may not know exactly what you're doing, but they'll see the outcome when the time comes. Your absence only makes the eventual reveal that much more powerful. The more you expose yourself, the more room you give for distractions, judgments, and distractions. If you're constantly revealing your moves, others have the opportunity to predict, criticize, or attempt to redirect you. But when you operate from a place of being untraceable, you cut off their ability to interfere with your process. You leave them with no roadmap, no clear understanding of where you're going or how you're getting there. And when you're ready to make your move, it comes as a surprise, a force to be reckoned with, because no one saw it coming. This unpredictability is what keeps others on edge, questioning what you're capable of, while you silently build toward your undeniable moment. In the absence of visibility, you gain the freedom to experiment and fail without public scrutiny. Most people are paralyzed by the fear of judgment, so they end up trying to please everyone, constantly over-explaining and oversharing to justify their actions. But true power is built in the quiet moments when you're free to experiment without the noise of public opinion. It's during these private times that you refine your ideas, work through your mistakes, and build something that is irrefutably yours. You don't need the approval of others to evolve. You evolve in silence, knowing that your growth is leading you towards something undeniable. The beauty of being untraceable is that it gives you time to sharpen your skills without distractions. It's in these moments of focused effort that mastery is achieved. You're not competing with anyone else's timeline or trying to measure up to external expectations. You're building on your own terms at your own pace. And because you've spent that time in preparation, when you finally step into the spotlight, your abilities are so refined, so perfected that no one can deny your expertise. You've outgrown the need for validation. What you've built is your proof. It's tempting to share everything, to broadcast every idea, every moment of progress, but that openness often opens the door for self-doubt and unnecessary pressure. When you share too much, you risk the feedback of those who aren't aligned with your vision, who won't understand your journey or the importance of your work. Being untraceable allows you to shield your purpose from the noise, giving you the space to cultivate it in peace. You can move forward with confidence, knowing that your trajectory isn't being shaped by the opinions of others, but by your own unwavering commitment to your vision. When you choose to remain untraceable, you also create a sense of anticipation. People begin to wonder about your next move, your next breakthrough. They can see the quiet but undeniable progress, but they have no clear picture of how you're making it happen. This uncertainty keeps them intrigued and excited about what you'll do next. By staying out of sight, you control the narrative in such a way that your eventual success becomes almost inevitable. People won't just see your success, they'll be in awe of it. Because they weren't there for the build-up, they'll only witness the triumph. There's power in strategic silence. In a world where everyone feels the need to speak, shout, and express every thought, the person who remains silent holds the power of depth. While others fill the air with noise, you're doing the real work. You're creating, developing, and building, and when you emerge, you're not just a voice among the crowd, you're a force that has been quietly preparing to change everything. Your silence becomes a sign of strength, of focus, and of purpose. It signifies that your actions are louder than words, and that when you do speak, when you do show up, it will be something that can't be ignored. Remaining untraceable is also a form of self-protection. In a world full of opinions, criticisms, and fleeting trends, it's easy to get lost in the chaos. The more you expose yourself, the more susceptible you become to people's projections, judgments, and interference. But when you stay in the background, when you control when and how much you reveal, you protect your peace and your focus. You allow yourself the space to move without constantly worrying about external noise or validation. And when the right time comes, you show up not because you need to be seen, but because what you've built demands attention. When you finally decide to make your move, it's with undeniable force. The beauty of being untraceable is that when you step into the light, you do so with a level of power and influence that can't be questioned. You've built in private, you've mastered your craft, and now when the time is right, your presence is unmistakable. People aren't just impressed, they're in awe. They weren't privy to the behind-the-scenes work, the trials, the sacrifices, and the late night. They only see the culmination of everything you've been quietly working toward. And in that moment, you become not just a participant in the game, but a dominant force that everyone recognizes.